what happens if you have a bad event? It's going to happen. It's inevitable in sports. You just never are perfect. You're never able to be at your best all of the time. And it's something that we talk about really often here at NCSA, is that just knowing that you have to have a backup plan. You have to have, before you have a backup plan, you have to have a pre-plan. You have to take steps and put yourself in a good position to get recruited, regardless of whether or not you have a good event. The last thing that we want for student athletes and parents and families to be doing is going out to a camp, a tournament, showcase, whatever it may be, and relying on that as my sole opportunity of getting recruited. Because then if you have a bad day, that's all you have. That's the coach's only analysis of you. That's all they know of you. That's all they can evaluate. They don't really have anything else to go off of. So that's why we talk about pre-planning with putting together your NCSA profile, with building it up with your stats, your schedule, your grades, your video, taking steps beforehand to get that information, those videos, that profile out in front of those coaches beforehand so they can see your potential. They know what you look like before going to that event. So that way when they go see you, you have a bad day, you fall down, you trip on the blue line skating backwards, and someone walks in behind you and scores on a breakaway. That would be me, not CNC. When someone does that, they know that's just an anomaly. That's not who this student athlete is. They've seen your video and they know that bad things happen, and it's inevitable. But CNC talks through, you probably have great stories around seeing people have bad events that are probably really good players. You probably had some of them yourself, but give us a little bit more insight from that coach, just knowing that from a coach's perspective, they understand you're going to have a bad day here and there.
I think, there's a lot of different directions that I want to go in here. There's just so many different stories kind of running through my head, but I'll just say this: Rome is not built in a day, right? Like Kyle keeps harping on, and we all know this. We're all athletes. We have bad days. We're going to have bad events. We're going to have bad games. Rome is not built in a day. You are not recruited on just one moment, right? Now, if it's a repeated pattern, then that's a different story. Coaches are going to look at not just your athletic ability, what you're doing at a camp, what you're doing at an event. They're watching not only your play, they're watching your body language. So even if you're having a bad day, what's your body language like? How are you still interacting with your teammates or, the kids at camp? Are you still, holding yourself accountable? Are you still perked up and asking questions? Are you doing the drill right? What's your character like? What are your grades like? All of these things come into play. So just because you have a bad event doesn't take away from potentially all the good that you're doing outside of the ice or or off the field or off the ice. Again, they're going to happen, and we know this. Now, when it comes to having a bad event, you have to make sure that you hold yourself accountable. There is nothing worse than chatting with a kid after a game, after a camp. And usually when I'm on the phone, I'm like, hey, how'd you think the game went? Tell me a little bit about it. And it's just excuse after excuse after excuse after excuse. And it's like, all right, I'm writing that down. It's like, oh, well, I had homework to do, or, I had this. No, just say, hey, I had a bad day. And this is what I plan to do to fix it. And, this is what I learned from those mistakes. Kids don't do that enough. It's usually, I had a bad game because of this, or I messed this up because of this. Take accountability. And I will never forget, I was at a national camp, and I unfortunately sprained my ankle. I was distraught. I sucked the rest of the time there. Like, this was my moment for potentially Team USA. And I was just pouting beyond pouting. And a college coach came out to me and she patted me on the back and said, sis, we all know who you are. It's going to be okay, but you have to pick yourself up, because if you keep acting like this, nobody's going to recruit you. And that is a honest to God truth story. And anytime that I could tell that to kids, I do, because it is so important. Just because you have a bad game doesn't mean your recruiting's over, right? Rome's not built in a day. You're not recruited in just one event. Just keep at it and hold yourself accountable.
I think we somehow have to figure out where we can find a recording of you pouting, and someone so we can add that to the show where we're talking about recruiting stories. But I think I'll do even worse than making excuses. Acting like you did well when you didn't do well. just shows a complete lack of awareness and self-awareness and conscientiousness. So be aware of that as well. You don't have to be overly critical about yourself, but don't pretend like you had a great day as well. Hopefully you have someone in your family, your parents are able to say, yeah, it wasn't that great a day today. You're a little bit tougher day. We live in a relative world where everything's equally as good no matter what it is. So keep that in mind. That's not how sports are going to be. That's not how coaches are going to look at things. It's a meritocracy still. So keep in mind that if you do poorly, acknowledge that you do poorly, and don't, like CNC said, don't have excuses for it. Own up to those mistakes and talk about how you're going to get better and how you're going to rectify them moving forward. And don't ever pout. Pouting's the worst.